Hello, ladies and gents! Another week is gone, and that means it's time to ace a brand new machine, or better to say, a rather old one. On the menu today is the Tier 5 German medium tank, the Panzer IV H, aka the Panzer IV H, aka the trusty DERP mobile. Now luckily this machine actually did see plenty of action during the Second World War, which also means that we will have a lot of stories and historical pictures about it over on the Wartime blog. The article is already up, so if you want some background info on the original, just hit that link in the description below. As usual, before we jump into my ace tanker game with this machine, let's have a really quick look at the armor profile of it, especially as it's rather unique, and it actually works completely the opposite way than you might expect it to. From the front, the flat upper plate and the lower plate, which usually are the two weakest parts frontally, are actually this time around the toughest parts of the tank with 80mm of armor, while the very well angled midplate is actually the weak spot. This has only a laughable 20mm of armor, so unless you are shooting it at an extreme angle, for example from a small vehicle, literally everything will penetrate it. And as from 61mm of gun caliber upwards, everything will overmatch it from any angle anyway. The turret frontally is a bit weird as well, as the cupola, which is another usual weak spot, is once again the toughest part of the machine, with 95mm of armor in the middle, while the entire turret front, apart from right behind the gun, has only 50mm for protection. The sides of the machine are rather weak as well, with 35mm of armor only, but thanks to the huge side skirts, they are actually quite resilient against HE and heat shells. So if you want to shoot the Panzer IV with any of these ammunition types, try your luck at the back of the hull, where the spaced armor is missing and the hull is only 20mm thick. But that's enough with the dry stuff. Let's discuss the other details already on the battlefield. Alright, so here we are in our Panzer IV H, this time around in a standard battle on Rumberg. So, Panzer IV H, what kind of animal is it? Well, it's well known for a couple of things. First of all, it has a 105mm DERP gun, and DERP guns are funny. Well, unless you are on the receiving end of them, of course. You also have the trademark side skirts, both on the hull and also around the turret, which makes this machine really easy one to identify on the battlefield. And last but not least, probably quite a few of us have some annoying experiences trying to find these things, because one, you can't really side scrape them, so if you shoot them and they pay attention, you will take damage. And as we also discussed regarding the armor profile of it, it's a really trollish machine, meaning that when you try to shoot them in the regular weak spots, you will actually hit the toughest parts of the machine. Now in the meantime, in the gameplay I'm actually trying to convince these two heavies, so maybe go up front and try to take on the enemy. Yeah, well, Panzer IV H. I'm having really mixed feelings about this. When it works out, and mostly it works out when you can really bully around lower tier vehicles and smack in huge penetrating HE shot to softer targets, it's a great machine. However, trying to find anything that's a little bit heavily armored and engaging opponents which know where actually to shoot it, well, it can be a frustrating experience, let's say. Now it all begins with the gun itself. This is, for all intents and purposes, a DERP gun, which means it's inaccurate as hell, 0.53 meters dispersion, and even to get to that dispersion you will have to aim for 2.2 seconds, not taking into account the secondary dispersion values. As we casually snipe the Easy 8 over the hill, no problem. It's not all bad news, however. You have 10 degrees of gun depression, and you have 410 average damage, which is absolutely massive at Tier 5. For example, if we can take a good hit on that Cromwell, first shell, of course, we just make space for our second shot, we will take a good chunk out of him. Now remember though, that's a lightly armored tier 6 machine. However, we only did 163 damage, and that's the annoying part. With only 53mm of average penetration, a lot of times you won't do the full damage. Unless you hit a very flat, very weak part of the armor, you mostly will do around 100-150 damage. And, well, that can be a little bit annoying, especially as you will then have to wait for almost 8 seconds to be able to fire again. Now this Panzer T25 would probably disagree though, as we keep him tracked with every single shot, and just slowly, and probably for him most annoyingly, whittle his health down. Now, you can actually overcome this problem, especially when fighting more heavily armored tier 5 and tier 6 machines, by using heat shells. Heat shells are great on this machine, 104mm of penetration, and in exchange you only have to lose a little bit of damage, bringing it down to 350 per shot. And that is massive. Now of course for the ass of the VK, we didn't really need a heat shell, did we? Now this could be tricky, however. Tier 6 medium tank, the T-3485, and we will never penetrate it from the front. Luckily, we take no damage as he is absolutely obliterated by our team. And now comes the fun part, shooting at artillery. Oh yes, that's what HE shells are for. And there she goes. Now a quick word about this match. There is actually a lot of squishy stuff on the enemy team that I would absolutely love to shoot. Talking about the light tanks, all the artillery, the T-28, the flak bus, which is a really tasty snack for this machine. So the effectiveness of it really will depend on what kind of match it gets into, which of course can be said for basically any machine. But at the same time, your experience will vary widely depending on what kind of opponents you face. Once again, you can make it a little bit better if you are willing or able to fire a lot of heat ammunition. But if you are only firing HE, basically you will have to pray that you come up against the right opponents in this thing. Have a look at how long it takes to aim, and wow, that was actually a very lucky shot. So talking about coming up behind opponents, you actually have a quite decent speed, 40 km/h top speed, with about 17 horsepower per ton power to weight ratio makes this thing rather mobile actually. You have a bit mediocre hull traverse at 32 degrees, but the turret traverse is excellent with 46 degrees per second. Unfortunately though, our speed was just not enough to get the last remaining kills in this match. Still, about 2000 damage, not too shabby at tier 5. So, this was the round when pretty much everything worked out with that moody DERP gun as intended. 1900 damage was well enough for an ace tanker with a high caliber on top. Unfortunately though, we ended up just 1 kill short for the top gun. Looking at the team results, I think we can safely say that not many people had a really good game this time around from either side, though that definitely worked in our favor as well, allowing us to hoover up all that damage. And last but not least, we fired 1605mm HE shells in these less than 6 minutes, scoring 14 direct hits. And since we didn't have to touch our heat reserves, we finished the match with a very healthy 42,000 credits profit. Mid-tier games for the win. Alright, this was then my ace tanker game and some pointers for the Panzer IV H, this tier 5 DERP machine. I hope you found it useful or at least entertaining, and if you did, thanks a lot for considering giving this a like or sharing it. Now there are 2 more cracking games coming up over the weekend featuring a relatively rarely sighted IS-5 and the lightning-fast MT-25. For now, however, let me already wish you a great weekend and hopefully a lot of gaming time as well. Thank you very much for watching all week, and I look forward to seeing you again in one of the next videos.